supernatural phenomenon during the fall of Byzantium, the city of Constantinople. It was taken by an 18-year-old Mehmed. His mother was one of the wives of his father, a Christian Orthodox woman who, after the fall of the city, convinced him to cover the Hagia Sophia Cathedral with plaster, and that way the murals were all saved. But what happened? What was this supernatural phenomenon during the fall of the city? Always and historically, it was the repentance of the peoples that saved and exalted the peoples, and the unrepentance that led to the mourning and conquest. Well, the conquest again had to do with the fall of this city as well. God's protection was alive and well in Byzantium, manifested in miraculous interventions, as in his pre-Christian people. We have stories of this in the Old Testament, obviously, of Israel. Now, just as when he repented of scourges of captivity and famine, he helped him with the white-clad angels on golden horses to turn his conquerors. We can read that in the Maccabean books, how the Maccabees in just 3 years overtook the city of Jerusalem from the ancient Greeks into naughty fights, so he raised storms and sank ships spontaneously. Many do not know a shocking aspect of the fall of the city of Constantinople, during which something supernatural happened. Kindly support my Patreon account since YouTube has again demonetized my YouTube channel. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box below. As history goes, Mehmed was trying to capture, he had a siege of the city. We know that city, I've been there 3 times. It has tremendous walls. It has 3 lines of walls. And he just couldn't conquer the city. Until one day, one of his soldiers came and told him, "Take it tomorrow, because I've seen something like a gray pink mantle being lifted up from the city going into the sky." And that's what happened. The next day, Mehmed took the city. But let's see what happens here. Many do not know the shocking aspect of the fall of the city of Constantinople, today Istanbul, during which something supernatural happened to show that God was the one who protected Byzantium for 1,000 years. The conqueror Mehmed, desperate for the 2-month siege and the great destruction of from his hordes to take the city, decided to abandon the conquest. He ordered his army to prepare for departure. Indeed, the order was carried out until one of his generals exercised him to make one last attack, convincing him with a joint testimony of his army that while throughout the siege the soldiers saw a white cloud covering the king of the cities, last night they saw this bright cloud rising to the sky, giving the interpretation, quote, "Their God forsakes them," end quote. And it was right, they were right. Many a time we have, even in the Maccabees, many a time in the Old Testament, we see that the faithful don't see what's going on spiritually, whereas their enemies do. That happened in one of the battles with the Maccabees, that Maccabees thought that they would lose, whereas the ancient Greeks, which had all this armor and swords and everything, just dropped everything and ran for the hills. And later on, when the Maccabees asked, "Why did you do that?" They said, "Because we saw all these huge white beings behind you." So in other words, the ancient Greeks were able to see angels, God's angels, on the side of the Maccabees, and that's what caused them to just in fright flee for the hills. So there are things that people see, some people cannot see spiritually. So the bright cloud rose into the sky, and it gave the interpretation, "Their God forsakes them." So they convinced Muhammad Mehmed to attempt his last and final onslaught, and we know the well-known dramatic events that the city fell. This is stated by the chronicler of the fall, Ducas. The interpretation of superficial coincidences, Justinian injury and back door is not convincing. These are external phenomena that do not exhaust the internal sequence of causes, which is the unsearchable will of God. And do I know the Lord? After all, the Lord curses what you want to lose. This is from the book The Mother of Christians, Celebrations and Her Miracles on Mount Athos, written by higher monk Maximus of Mount Athos. So later on, what happened? Mehmed, who was only 18 years old, went to it to take the city, and he saw at the main gate of the city a handprint that was melted into one of the rocks, and it was spread out with 5 fingers spread out. He said, "What is that? Somebody touched the rock and melted the rock with 5 fingers, like melted butter." And we saw this in one of the very strange Sword in the Stone again videos that you'll see a couple of videos back from yesterday. This is definitely spiritual. When it's the will of God, anything is possible. So Mehmed asked the high priests of the city, the bishops, and said, "I'll give you 1 week, and you have to tell me what that open handprint with the 5 fingers melted onto the rock means." And they came back a week later after fasting and prayer, and they said, "God informed us that if there are only 5 people, 5 faithful Christians living in the city, you would not have been able to take it." So I believe that there were at that time 500,000 souls in that city before they started fleeing and leaving. So you can imagine how strong it is, how very important it is for people to have strong faith. And they are also the ones that keep God's, what shall we say, divine protection over their area. So please leave your comments, and thank you for your support. This is actually a well-known event that took place since at that time. Was the fall of Constantinople happened about 1453, in May of 1453. Thank you for your support. Please leave your comments. Thank you.